General Hospital spoilers tease that Portia Robinson stood at the foot of the operating table, the sterile scent of antiseptic stinging her nostrils as she surveyed the patient before her. The boy, Kai, lay unconscious beneath the flurry of surgical prep, tubes in his arms, monitors lined up beside him, the steady beep of his heart echoing in the hushed chamber of General Hospital's pediatric wing. Portia's white coat felt heavier than usual, as though each stitch and clamp she would handle carried the weight of every heartbeat in that room. She adjusted her mask, her eyes flicking to the file she had clutched en route from her office, a file that bore 2 sets of medical records side by side, which, she realized with a jolt of dread, matched not only her own bloodline, but, inexplicably, that of Curtis Ashford, the man with whom she had once shared stolen nights and fractured dreams. Portia closed her eyes for a fraction of a second and drew a steadying breath. Years ago, she had concealed the truth of Trina Robinson's parentage, that Trina was the product of her affair with Curtis. That secret had torn apart families, reshaped alliances, and haunted her every reflection in the mirror. Yet now, as she stared at Kai's pale face, she wondered if another secret, more devastating, had been hidden from her. The file's notations revealed that Kai, a boy of color whose deep brown eyes sparkled at every attempt to distract him with cartoons, shared genetic markers far too specific to ignore, the same rare blood antigen Curtis carried, and the precise pattern of Trina's hereditary marker that Portia recognized from Brooke Lynn's pride when she held her daughter as an infant. Portia's gloved hand trembled as she held Kai's wrist. His pulse was faint but steady. The surgeon beside her began administering anesthesia, but Portia hesitated. She felt a tightening in her chest, a mixture of fear, anticipation, and a mother's instinct to protect. The surgical lights glared white above them, illuminating every fine line of Portia's face, every question etched in her eyes. How could this be? How had she missed it? And what would happen to the 5 precious years of friendship, the budding romance, and the laughter shared in whispered confidence between Kai and her own daughter, Trina? Portia's mind raced back to the day Trina had appeared, the day she stepped into Port Charles with a suitcase and a storm of sorrow. Born in the aftermath of Portia and Curtis's fleeting reunion, Trina had arrived almost 9 years earlier, a miracle that had ignited hope, guilt, and dizzying joy all at once. In the hospital's private wing, Portia had cradled her newborn daughter, tears mingling with smiles as Curtis stood at her side, his eyes glistening with pride and regret. But those moments had been undercut by a darker secret. Portia, on that same night, had given birth not just to Trina, but to twins, 2 hearts beating beneath the same pulse of her hopes and fears. The hospital corridors whispered with rumors of the second child, a boy who had vanished within hours of birth, swept away by unseen hands, with Portia told simply, "You had one baby." A tragedy she never fully understood, a wound she had never dared to peel back. Until now, Portia watched as the head surgeon, Dr. Harper, turned to her. "Are you all right, Dr. Robinson?" he asked, voice hushed behind his mask. "We're ready when you are." Portia's throat constricted. She forced a nod. "Proceed," she whispered. But as the surgeons began the incision, her eyes stayed fixed on Kai's file, on the line stating, "Father, Curtis Ashford," and "Mother, Portia Robinson." Her breathing hitched, and for a moment, she questioned whether to walk away, close the file, and let the surgery continue without her involvement. But the boy needed her. He had come into her life with that bright smile, asking her to introduce him to Trina, to help him find the courage to speak to the girl he adored. She had watched the 2 of them giggle side by side in the park, felt the warmth of their whispered crushes. And now, the possibility that they were brother and sister sent a shock straight through her bones. As she scrubbed in alongside the team, Portia felt her pulse drum in her ears louder than the monitor's beep. The minutes stretched into lifetimes as bone, muscle, and careful sutures took shape. At each step, Portia's mind spiraled back to her memories of Curtis, The way his broad hands once held her, the solemn promise he made to protect their daughter, and the grudging acceptance he had forced into his face when he learned of Trina's conception. If this child, Kai, was also their son, what reckoning awaited them all? The surgery concluded without complication. Kai's vitals stabilized, and Portia stepped out of the OR, dropping her gloves into the bin with a soft clatter that felt like a final punctuation mark. She leaned against the plastic-wrapped wall, closing her eyes. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. With shaking fingers, she pulled it free and saw a text from Curtis. "Call me. Now." There was no question in his message, no time to prepare, no courtesy of words. Portia's pulse spiked. In Curtis's office at Aurora, the gentle hum of machines contrasted sharply with the tension on Curtis's face. He stood before a young woman in a dusty trench coat whose name he did not know. She called herself Marisol King, and she had arrived in Port Charles only days ago, speaking of family lost and children hidden. Her accent carried the cadence of distant shores, and her eyes held a mixture of fear and defiance. Curtis had learned of her through whispered rumors, a woman claiming knowledge of a child's true lineage, offering to help those willing to pay her price. On autopilot, Curtis had arranged the meeting, though he felt a knot of dread coil in his gut at the thought that Marisol might truly know something about Kai. Marisol's gaze flicked to the door as Curtis entered, then returned to her cell phone, where a single photo glowed, a framed snapshot of a nurse handing a newborn to a trembling couple, the hospital corridor gleaming behind them. Curtis's bannered nameplate caught the light as he strode forward. "You called to see me," he said quietly. "You said you have information about Kai." Marisol swallowed. "Yes," she said. "I was a medical records clerk at that hospital years ago. I remember the night Mrs. Robinson gave birth. I remember that she delivered twins. And I know what happened to the boy." Curtis felt the room shift. His pulse pounded in his temples. "You? What do you mean?" "Portia told me she had one daughter." Marisol looked down at the photo. "That's Trina." That's exactly what she believed. But the baby boy was never gone. He was given to another family in witness protection for a short period, then transferred, under the direction of a high-ranking official, into the Corinthos household. The records were amended. You, Mr. Ashford, were never told, so they could control the narrative. Curtis's breath caught. He stared at Marisol, eyes wide. "You're saying, that boy is my son?" Marisol nodded, tears glistening. "Kai is your son." Curtis staggered back, hand gripping the back of a chair. He sank into it, voice raw. "Portia, she doesn't know." Marisol's gaze flickered to the closed door. "No. Nobody told her. And now she's the one treating him." Curtis leapt to his feet, rage and fear mingling in his chest. "Where is he now?" Marisol hesitated, then whispered the name of the hospital. Curtis didn't wait for more. Portia sat alone in the dim lighting of the pediatric recovery unit, reviewing Kai's charts for the 10th time. The chart's notations still read Mother, Unknown, and Father, Unknown, reflecting the amended records the hospital adhered to, records Portia had never questioned until she compared Kai's blood panel with her own and Curtis's. The genetic markers had matched exactly. Her eyes blurred with tears as the truth, terrible and irreversible, formed like frost across her heart. Her phone buzzed again, Curtis's name flashing on screen. With trembling hands, she answered. "Curtis?" His voice was strained but urgent. "Portia, I need you to listen. That boy, Kai, he's your son. He's mine, too. You have to stop everything. Go to security, see if there's a file on him under my name. Then, we have to figure out how to tell Trina." Portia's heart pounded. She closed her eyes. How do you know?" she whispered. "I met someone who worked at the hospital," Curtis said. She confirmed it. "You gave birth to twins. We lost him for 2 days, then they moved him, covered it up." Portia pressed her fingers to her forehead. "Oh God," she breathed. Curtis's voice softened. Portia, I'll be there in 10 minutes. Don't let anyone take him from you. Portia ended the call and rose unsteadily. She pulled on her coat and hurried out to the nurse's station. I need access to the original birth records for this patient, she said, showing her credentials. There's been a clerical error. The head nurse frowned, tapping on the computer. We keep only the amended files on system. The originals are locked in the archives, accessible only by court order. She glanced at the clock. You'll have to file a request, Dr. Robinson. Portia's frustration flared. Curtis Ashford is on his way. He is proof. I need to see those files now. The nurse's gaze softened. If Curtis calls security and vouches for you, we can open the locked archives. Portia's jaw set. Thank you. She dashed back to Kai's bedside and placed a hand on his small shoulder, marveling again at the curve of his jaw. Mommy's coming, she whispered. Curtis burst through the doors moments later, carrying a manila envelope. Portia rushed to him, eyes rimmed red. Did you get it? He nodded, handing her the envelope. Original birth records. And look, he added, pulling out a printed email from a hospital administrator ordering the sealed files. This is the director's note. They were covered up on purpose. Portia tore open the envelope and sifted through documents, a birth certificate listing her name and Curtis's, a supplemental note referencing a second child, to be held pending investigation, and an on-the-record amendment signed by Lois Cerullo. Portia's breath caught. Lois, she whispered. Curtis placed a hand on her shoulder. Someone wanted to hide this. But look at the details, blood type, genetic markers. It matches you and me. And it matches Trina. He hesitated, then added softly, Do you realize what this means? Our children. Portia's head spun. Trina and Kai, they've been seeing each other. Curtis felt his stomach drop. They're in love, he asked, voice tight. Portia's eyes filled. They told me they were close. He asked me to set up a study session for them. He's always said he admired her. And she's been so happy around him. Curtis closed his eyes, gripping Portia's hand. We have to stop this. Portia nodded, tears spilling. But how do we tell them? That night, Portia and Curtis sat in Portia's living room, the envelope of documents spread across the coffee table. They whispered in hushed tones, mapping out the limits of what to say and how. They both knew that if Trina or Kai discovered they were siblings after having been lovers, albeit innocent ones, the emotional damage would be catastrophic. Yet they also understood that the truth could not be hidden forever. Curtis stood and paced. We have to talk to Kai first, he said. Get him alone, explain it gently. He's young enough that he might process it without complete devastation. Portia shook her head. But if he betrays Trina's trust, if he panics before she knows, he'll freeze. We need to do it together, all four of us in one room. Curtis stopped. You think that will work? Portia closed her eyes. I don't know what will work. But I know we have to come clean before they find out on their own. Curtis sighed. Then tomorrow, after school, meet them at the park. We tell them there, okay? Portia nodded. She reached across and took Curtis's hand, thumb stroking his knuckles. We'll protect them, she promised. No matter what. The next afternoon, Portia and Curtis waited on a bench by the statue of the sailor in the center of Lakewood Park. The sun was bright but gentle, casting long shadows on the manicured lawn. Portia's heart pounded as they heard footsteps on the path. Trina approached first, her ponytail swinging, followed by Kai, who smiled and broke into a run when he spotted Portia. He leaped onto her for a hug, and she lifted him, holding him close for a moment longer than usual. Thank you for bringing me here, Mom, Kai said, voice light. I wanted to talk about the study session I asked for. Portia gently set him down. Actually, she began, voice trembling, we need to talk about something else. She and Curtis exchanged a glance. Kai and Trina stood close together, hand in hand, oblivious to the tight knot of tension in the air. Portia let out a quiet breath. There's something very important you both need to know. Something about you, about your family. Trina scooted closer, brows knitting. Is everything okay, Mom? Portia swallowed. It's more than okay. It's complicated. She glanced at Curtis. He stepped forward. Trina, Kai, we have information you deserve to hear about who you are. He took the folder from Portia, flipping it open to a copy of the original birth certificate. Kai recognized his name first. That's my birth certificate. His voice shook. But it lists other people as my parents. Portia nodded, heart aching. Yes, because when you were born, there was a mistake, a secret someone tried to protect. You were born at the same time as your sister, Trina. Trina's hand flew to her mouth. My sister, she whispered. She glanced at Kai, eyes wide. Kai, are you my brother? Portia knelt before them, reaching out. Yes, you two are twins, fraternal twins. You were born moments apart. But a decision was made to separate you, to help protect you both. It was done by someone who loved you, but it was a mistake. Kai's eyes filled. But I love Trina. She's my girlfriend. His voice trembled. Curtis knelt beside Trina. Trina, those feelings, they were innocent. You both grew up believing you were not related. But now you know the truth. Trina's tears began to fall. I don't know what to think. She looked at Kai. I love you. Her voice cracked. Kai took a shaky breath. I love you too. His tears joined hers. Portia wrapped her arms around them both. You're still siblings, she said softly. There will have to be a change in your relationship, no more romantic feelings. But that doesn't mean you have to push each other away. You can still be close, best friends, brother and sister. Trina buried her face in Portia's shoulder, sobbing. Kai put an arm around her. Curtis knelt beside them, pulling Portia into the embrace. For a long moment, the four of them held each other as the reality of lab results, sealed documents, and stolen childhoods gave way to love's resilience.